It was supposed to be my mother's birthday dinner, a night of candles, laughter, and peace. Instead, my father's fist slammed against the table so hard the silverware rattled. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "You're selfish, Hannah. Your sister is better than you in every possible way." The room froze. Forks stopped midair. Glasses trembled in hands. My mother gasped a tiny sound swallowed by the heavy silence. Chloe leaned back in her chair, smirk tugging at her lips like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. But I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I laughed, sharp and cold. "Perfect," I said, locking eyes with Thomas. "Then I won't be paying her rent anymore." The silence that followed was heavier than stone. My father's face turned crimson, veins rising at his temples. He shoved his chair back with a screech that echoed like thunder. "Get out!" he roared, pointing at me as if I were no longer his daughter but an intruder. So I stood up, straightened my dress, and walked out. That night on my mother's birthday, I wasn't just leaving dinner. I was breaking free. I used to think love was a chore list, that if I completed it without complaint would eventually buy me a seat at the table. I learned the chores early. Be useful, be quiet, be smaller than Chloe's light. If she was fireworks, I was the person sweeping the paper ash off the driveway after everyone went inside. Thomas never said it that way. He didn't have to. The house spoke for him. His framed photos of Chloe's perfect report cards lined the hallway while my honor certificate curled under a loose magnet on the fridge, half covered by a coupon for rotisserie chicken. Diane tried to make the house smell like comfort cinnamon in the fall, lemon in the spring. I tried to make myself smell like it too warm, good wanted. Sunday mornings, I learned the exact moment a pancake turns when the bubbles on top blink like tiny eyes and the edges crisp just enough to hold. I made Dad's first, then Chloe's stack with a smiley face and blueberries. Mine were last eaten standing over the sink. He'd pat the top of Chloe's head and call her my brightest star, a phrase that hung in the kitchen air longer than the steam. He never touched my head. Maybe he thought praise would smudge. Chloe learned to glide through rooms as if the furniture bowed to let her pass. I learned to diagram routes that left space between us, the long way to the laundry door, the staircase taken when she was looking at the mirror. When she started college, I learned to wire money without attachments, rent groceries, her phone plan, the little oops transfers that arrived at 1 a.m. with heart emojis and promises she barely remembered making. My bank app kept a patient count out. I told myself this is what good sisters do. I told myself that if I was a reliable current, the river would one day return to me. The first thing I ever bought that felt like mine was a 12-year-old sedan the color of wet pavement. The paint was dull and honest, like a face without makeup. I saved tips from the diner in a coffee can under my bed quarters, stacked like tiny moons, and paid cash. The key had a chipped blue fob I kept on a lanyard around my neck. When it thumped against my sternum as I walked, I felt taller. Thomas said it was a stopgap, as if my independence were a leak he would fix when he had time. Chloe called it cute, the way people praise a child's drawing before hanging it in a hallway no one uses. The sedan became my quiet confessional. I learned the temperature of the steering wheel in every month, the creak of the driver's seat when I took a breath too sharp. In that car, I practiced interviews, apologies, and the sentences that would never cross our dining table. I am tired. I am not your wallet. I am not less. I drove the streets that skirted the neighborhood's biggest houses and let the word unfair sit on my tongue like a hard candy that never shrank. I told myself I could swallow it if I just held it there long enough. At family gatherings, Thomas's joy took the shape of a microphone only he could see. He listed Chloe's victories like he was reading from a bullet point packet no one else had been given. He had a way of saying we when he meant she. We got straight A's. We have a job lined up. We are going places until my own pronouns felt like misplaced luggage. I learned to fill the dishwasher like a Tetris master and to leave first so my absence wouldn't look like an argument. I kept my receipts tucked in an envelope labeled someday, as if proof of my quiet contribution might eventually count as love's down payment. Diane floated between us, teacup always in motion. She is a woman made of sunlight, filtered through blinds, soft-striped, and apologizing for the shadows she cannot move. When Thomas's voice sharpened, she smoothed the tablecloth. When Chloe's needs swelled, she refolded the napkins twice. She'd press her hand to my wrist in the hallway. "You know how your father is?" she'd whisper, as if understanding were a balm you could rub until the sting vanished. I learned to nod so she could sleep. It's terrifying how quickly generosity turns to habit in other people's mouths. Landlords called me instead of Chloe. The phone company listed me as Hannah Responsible Party. When rent was late, it was my cheeks that burned. The app's "Are you sure?" confirmation felt like a joke. There was never a real question. I began measuring my days in auto-pay pings and the weight of a buzzing phone. The sound no longer startled me. It just added another layer to the house's hum, the refrigerator motor, the clock's throat clearing the family's need, droning at a pitch you can only hear if it is directed at you. I kept a box under my bed even after I moved out the coffee can with a dent a gas receipt from the night I made it to the city on fumes, and hope a Polaroid of the sedan with my thumb in the frame. Artifacts of a person I insisted existed. When Thomas made a speech about Chloe's promise, I imagined sliding the box onto the table between the gravy boat and the centerpiece. See, I wanted to say, I have a life that is not a margin note to hers. Instead, I smiled on cue and carried plates to the sink. Humiliation can be invisible when it's arranged neatly. You keep the hurt tidy, stack it like folded towels, color-code it, so even you admire the order. Then a sentence slips through, "Chloe has potential. She deserves support. What are you doing that is so important?" And the stack tilts one corner, sagging. I felt that tilt in my shoulders. First, a slope in my posture I couldn't correct, even with deep breaths learned from podcasts about boundaries I never enforced. There were moments, small, merciful, that tried to argue with the story being written. A neighbor thanked me for jump-starting her car and called me reliable as if it were a crown. A table of regulars at the diner waited for my section even when another was open. A kid I tutored in algebra sent me a photo of his passing grade and spelled my name right. They were tiny rebellions against the script. They proved I existed outside of the roles my family had assigned. The proof was not loud enough to echo in our dining room, but it was enough to keep me from disappearing entirely. The house held its own collection of symbols that, if you looked quick, revealed the plot. The family photo on the mantelglass cracked right over my cheekbone. The thermostat Thomas guarded like a bank vault, daring me to need comfort. The spare key Diane hid in a ceramic bird by the porch, a bird that never flew. The gift bag recycled so many times its handles frayed. On Diane's birthdays, the candles always matched the table runner. Thomas loved a theme. I learned to count them like a countdown, even when no one was making a wish. By the time I carried a cake knife to Diane's side this year, my arms remembered every plate I'd ever cleared and every bruise I'd pressed into silence. The kitchen smelled like roasted chicken and garlic bread, a scent that used to mean home and now felt like a polite lie. I told myself I could get through one more evening if it kept the peace. I told myself peace was worth my edges. The truth sat up straight anyway, like a guest no one invited, and no one dared to ask to leave. The candles flickered tall and polite flames, thin as needles. Somewhere inside me, something already knew they weren't marking a celebration. They were marking a timer. The night of Diane's birthday should have ended with cake-clinking glasses and the small mercy of shared silence. Instead, it became the stage for a performance I hadn't auditioned for. Thomas leaned forward, his fork like a gavel, and the room leaned with him. "Hannah," he said, voice thick with command, "are you helping Chloe enough?" My fork hovered above the plate. The question wasn't a question. It was a sentence disguised as duty. I swallowed throat tight, every eye suddenly pinned to me like I was a specimen under glass. Chloe tilted her head, lips pursed, as though caught between modesty and revelation. And then, as though on cue, she sighed softly, a sound rehearsed. "There is something," she murmured, drawing the pause out long enough for every cousin, every aunt, every whispered conversation to fall silent. "I've been meaning to ask." I knew the line before she spoke it. My stomach twisted the way it had twisted every time a request arrived with a heart emoji attached, every time my paycheck split itself like bread on the table. "I need a car," Chloe said, her tone gentle like a prayer. "Something reliable to get to school and work. It would mean everything." The word car dropped into the room like a weight. Forks clinked softly against plates as people tried to pretend they weren't listening. My chest tightened. My sedan, the one I bought with diner tips, flickered across my mind. The chipped blue key fob. The way it had rattled but roared, the way it had meant freedom. I still drove it sometimes, and when I did, it whispered back mine. A car, I repeated, setting my fork down with deliberate precision. Chloe's smile widened with practiced innocence. Yes, Hannah, you've been so generous already, but a car would make all the difference. I turned slowly to Thomas, searching his face for the father who might say this was too much. Instead, his jaw set like stone. His voice carried no doubt, only judgment. You mean to tell me you can't do that for your sister? I felt the words slice through me. My pulse raced, but my voice came out steady. I already pay her rent. I cover groceries. I pay her phone bill. If she wants a car, that's her responsibility. The air thickened, instantly charged, like the seconds before lightning strikes. Thomas's eyes narrowed into knives. He slammed his fist against the table silverware, jumping like frightened animals. Chloe has potential, he barked. She's going places, but she needs support. I poured half my income into her future because she deserves it. And you can't even do this one thing. The words landed heavy, pulling every ounce of silence down with them. My cousins looked away, cheeks pink with second-hand shame. My aunts busied themselves with napkins, folding them twice, 3 times as though origami could distract them from cruelty. Diane's hand fluttered near her lips, trapped between speaking and swallowing. Chloe lowered her eyes, feigning embarrassment. But the corners of her mouth betrayed her. That smirk, small but certain, the look of someone who'd stacked the deck and knew the outcome. And then Thomas delivered the line that cracked something deep inside me. She's better than you, Hannah. Always has been. Always will be. The room spun in quiet horror. My ears rang, but beneath the ringing, something colder spoke up inside me. A laugh escaped before I could stop it, sharp foreign, almost metallic. Perfect. I said, my gaze meeting his without flinching. Then she can pay her own rent. The silence after those words was thicker than concrete. Thomas's face flushed crimson veins bulging at his temples. He shoved his chair back so violently it screeched across the floor, a sound like claws tearing into wood. He jabbed his finger at me, no longer father-only executioner. Get out, he roared. If you're so selfish, you don't belong here. Around us, the table shrank into itself. My cousins stared down at their plates, chewing without tasting. The candles flickered wildly, throwing our shadows against the walls like a play too grotesque to name. Diane's eyes filled glassy and wet, but no words came. Chloe pressed her lips together, the mask of humility, hiding triumph. I stood slowly, my heartbeat pounding, but my face a mask of calm. The chair legs scraped softly as I pushed back a whisper compared to his thunder. My gaze swept the table one last time, memorizing the faces that had watched me be erased for years. Happy birthday, Mom, I said softly, giving Diane the only gift I had left my restraint. Then I turned and walked away. Upstairs, in the silence of my childhood room, I leaned against the door and let the muffled chaos spill upward. Diane's pleading voice, Thomas's fury, Chloe's quiet satisfaction. The house had always been their theater. I had always been the stagehand. But this time I wasn't waiting in the wings. The breaking point wasn't loud. It wasn't fireworks or final bows. It was a laugh sharp as glass and the realization that I no longer owed them an audience. Silence can be louder than screams. When I shut the door of my old room that night, I didn't sob into a pillow or pace the floor like some wounded animal. I sat down at the edge of the bed, the same floral quilt from when I was 12 still stretched across it, and pulled out my phone. My hands trembled, but not with fear. Something sharper. Something I hadn't felt in years control. The glow of the banking app lit up my face in the dimness. I hesitated only once, thumb hovering over the login. Thomas had insisted I open this joint account years ago. He called it a family safety net, a cushion to catch us if disaster struck. But scrolling through the ledger now, I saw what it really was, a siphon. Rent transfers, labeled for Chloe. Tuition payments I never Authorized. Grocery charges that matched no receipt in my wallet. Even cash withdrawals tagged simply as Thomas. Each line was a scar carved into numbers. My stomach turned with every swipe. For years, I'd told myself this was temporary, that supporting Chloe was just until she found her footing. But the truth stared back at me in black and white. I wasn't her safety net. I was her foundation, her lifeline. And my own father had tied the rope around my neck and called it love. I closed my eyes and remembered the sound of my sedan's engine rattling beneath me at 17. The feeling of that chipped blue key fob thumping against my chest, a reminder that some part of me belonged only to me. That car had carried me into freedom once, and now the numbers on this screen were going to carry me again. My thumb didn't hesitate this time. Transfer funds. The remaining balance slid into my personal account with a quiet ping. One motion and the chain that bound me to them snapped. I exhaled long and slow, feeling something uncoil deep in my chest. The second motion came even easier. Close account. When the confirmation flashed, it felt like more than a button press. It felt like the slam of a door that had been open too long. The fallout arrived before sunrise. My phone buzzed violently against the nightstand, Chloe's name flashing over and over. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hannah, what the hell?" She shrieked, her voice jagged, frantic. "You drained the account. I can't pay my rent. Are you insane?" I leaned back against the headboard, my voice calm as glass. "Dad says you're better than me." "Then prove it. Figure it out." "You're ruining my life," she screamed. "No," I said quietly. "You and Dad ruined mine. I'm just done playing along." Her outrage screeched through the line until I hit end call. The silence that followed was delicious. Minutes later, another knock rattled my door. Diane stood in the hallway wrapped in her faded robe, her face carved with sleepless lines. "Can we talk?" she whispered. I stepped aside. She sank onto the edge of the bed, hands wringing. "Your father didn't mean it last night," she said softly, eyes pleading. "He just gets passionate when it comes to Chloe." I laughed, bitter and sharp. Passionate. "He humiliated me in front of everyone. He told me to get out." "You know how he is," she murmured. "Just fix this, Hannah. For the family." I snapped before I could stop myself. "Fix what I've been paying Chloe's bills for years. I'm done." Her eyes widened, panic flickering. "Hannah, don't do anything rash." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She left quietly, the click of the door sealing me back in my solitude. The rest of the day, messages from Chloe rolled in like a storm. "Rent's due. Answer me. What's wrong with you?" I stared at them until the words blurred, then typed back just once. "Ask Dad. He's got you." Then I muted her number. By evening, it was Thomas's turn. His voice came clipped, seething like a snake pressed under glass. "You closed the account." "It was my money," I said flatly. "You and Chloe drained me long enough. You're leaving your sister homeless. She's better than me," remember I shot back. "She'll survive." Silence hummed on the line, thick and dangerous. Then click. He hung up. I sat there in the quiet, staring at my darkened screen. The fear that used to rise in me at his disapproval didn't come. Instead, there was a stillness like the air after a storm. For the first time, I wasn't scrambling to apologize. I wasn't rushing to make it right. I realized then that my revenge didn't need fireworks. It could be quiet, calculated. It could be a simple act of refusal, closing a door, silencing a phone, ending a call that would undo years of their entitlement. And as the night deepened, I lay back on that old bed and whispered to the ceiling a promise only I needed to hear: I'm done being their wallet. From now on, I'll be mine. People think storms announce themselves with thunder. In my family, they come dressed as favors. By mid-morning, the phone had learned a new dance: buzz, buzz, pause. Buzz, buzz, pity. My aunt texted a paragraph that began with "sweetheart" and ended with "don't make your mother choose." A cousin DM'd Uncle Thomas, says you emptied the family account. Are you okay? The neighbor Diane gossips with on her morning walks left a voicemail about how hard parenting must be when one child refuses to help. The script wrote itself and handed me the villain's lines. When I didn't recite them, they said I'd forgotten my place. I drove back to the house because I still believed out of habit more than hope that proximity could make people kinder. The driveway was a jaw I'd known since childhood. I could back a car into it blindfolded. I wasn't prepared for the neon for sale sign slapped across the windshield of my old sedan. It glared fluorescent against the dull, honest paint, a bright, ugly sticker on my only proof of self. The price scrawled in permanent marker felt like an insult and an appraisal of me all at once. I walked in without knocking. Diane nearly dropped a dish. "Where's Dad?" I asked. She smoothed the dish towel until the cotton went sleek. "He thought since you weren't using it much, it's mine." The words came out flat, the way metal sounds when you tap it. Out the window, the sedan waited stoic as ever. I grabbed the keys from the ceramic bird on the porch, the hiding place everyone pretended was a secret. The metal was warm from the afternoon. When the engine coughed to life, it felt like an old friend clearing its throat. I ripped the sign off the glass, folded it in half until it crackled, and shoved it into the glove compartment like a bad memory. I had barely turned onto the main road when the dashboard lit with Thomas's name. "Changed your mind," he said, a smirk somehow audible. "You don't get to sell what's mine." "You left it here," he said like possession was 9/10 of morality. "I solved a problem." "You created one," I said. "Touch my property again, and I'll involve the police." "You don't call the police on family," he scoffed. "You stopped being family when you started treating me like a bank," I said, and hung up before he could swallow the silence. The whisper campaign pivoted when the car didn't sell. My cousin posted an all-caps status about disrespectful children that everyone knew was about me. Diane texted a photo of herself holding a mug that said "Best Mom" and wrote, "I hate the tension. Please be the bigger person. Bigger than a man twice my size beating the table like a drum. Bigger than a neon sign on my freedom." The request felt like a coat someone kept throwing over my shoulders even as I stood in the sun. The apartment felt different as soon as I opened the door, a quiet that wasn't mine. Drawers, breathless cushions exhaled. The lines where dust had been displaced made it obvious hands had sifted my life. The TV gone. The laptop's charger coiled on the floor like a shed snakeskin, the body already taken. My watch box, a silly collection of inexpensive pieces I wore like trophies for days, I'd survived, emptied, and left open, its velvet hollows accusing. No broken lock, no splintered jam, just the careful ransack of someone who knew how my doors breathed. I checked the key bowl as if logic could undo what emotion had already arranged. Only two people besides me had keys. I dialed Thomas with fingers that shook but didn't stumble. "Where's my stuff?" I asked. He feigned confusion long enough to make me doubt oxygen. "What are you talking about? My apartment was cleared out. No forced entry. This is simple math." A pause. Then the sound he makes when he believes he's explaining the world to a child. "Family comes first. Hannah, you closed the account. Chloe has needs. You stole from me." "You'd understand if you weren't so selfish," he said, and I could hear him shrug. Something inside me stopped trying to be understood. The thermostat on my wall clicked as if choosing a season. I looked at the ceramic bird keychain on my counter, the one that was supposed to be cute, a nod to home. It stared back hollow, a tiny vault propped open for anyone who believed they had the right. The smear spread faster than the truth. My phone lit with group chat bubbles blooming like mold. "We heard you called Dad a thief." "Why are you attacking your own blood?" "Chloe is fragile right now." No one asked how I was. They asked how quickly I could return to being useful. Diane called voice paper cut thin. "Your father says you're threatening him. Hannah, do you want him to have a heart attack? Think of your sister." "I thought of her for years," I said. "It's my turn. Please," she whispered. "Don't make this ugly." "It already is," I said more gently than I felt. At the diner that night, I moved through shifts like choreography I'd learned in another lifetime. The hiss of the flat top, the citrus squeak of a rag on laminate, the bell's sharp ding, normal sounds arranged around a heart beating too loudly. A regular slid a note toward me with the tip. "You look different today, lighter." I folded it and put it in my pocket like a passport. Under the counter, I ordered a new lock set online and scheduled a locksmith anyway because trust had become a torn sweater that caught on every nail. The next knock was not on my apartment door, but in my head memory rising like a bruise. 100 small moments where I had chosen peace over truth. The times I reversed out of conflict like a careful driver and let Thomas merge into my lane without signaling. The way Chloe's gratitude evaporated the second her needs were met. I took a pen and made a list not of what they'd taken that would take all night, but of what I still had: the car, a job, where my name was said kindly, a bank account that only I could open a spine. When I finally slept, I dreamed of the dining table covered not in food, but in documents. Bank statements in neat rows where placemats should be. The cracked family photo at the center like a centerpiece. In the dream, I stood and cleared the table, but instead of plates, I stacked proof. I woke with the image whole in my chest, a plan before I called it one. The morning tasted like metal on my tongue, a sign my body had decided this was war, even if my voice remained polite. I photographed the empty watchbox, the scuffed patch where the TV had been the undisturbed frame around the lock. I pulled bank PDFs, highlighted entries that didn't need context to look wrong, and saved them to a thumb drive shaped like a small silver key. Symbolism on symbolism, but it steadied me. Thomas called again, out of breath, with anger or righteousness, the difference too thin to bother separating. "You're making a fool of this family. Do you understand the damage you're doing?" "I understand exactly what I'm doing," I said. "I'm stopping the damage." He tried a new tactic, voice softened with false concern. "You're not thinking clearly. Come over tonight. We'll talk like adults." "We've never talked like adults," I said. "We've talked like you're the judge and I'm the defendant and Chloe is the court's favorite." "You love drama," he snapped, revealing the script beneath his offer. "I love receipts," I said, and ended the call. The power struggle kept shifting, a chess game where he believed he was playing checkers. He moved pieces made of shame, obligation, and legacy. I moved with silence, documentation, withholding. Every time I didn't flinch, the board tilted a little in my direction. Diane sent a photo of the old casserole dish I loved with, "Do you want this?" as if a hand-me-down could stitch a wound closed. I replied with a lock change confirmation and nothing else. That night, I drove the sedan to the far side of the lot, tucked beneath a street lamp that hummed like a lullaby. The engine idled a beat longer than necessary, as if reluctant to let go. I rested my forehead on the wheel and let the quiet soak in. The leather was warm from the day. The old radio dial glowed a soft, forgiving orange. I remembered teaching myself to parallel park in this car, inching forward and back until angles made sense. I could do the same with my life maneuver: out of tight spaces, leave enough room for escape. When I finally climbed the stairs to my apartment, the new lock clicked with a sound that felt like a sentence finishing itself. On the counter, the ceramic bird looked smaller. I turned it upside down and slipped the spare key into the trash. The smack of plastic against plastic was satisfying in a way I hadn't anticipated, like punctuation after years of run-on sentences. My phone lit again, Chloe this time, a text wrapped in pink hearts that felt like nails. "I'm scared. Rent is late. Don't be cruel." I typed and deleted until I realized there was only one sentence I could live with. "Ask Dad." I sent it and turned the phone face down. Storms roll past eventually. Hours gathered and hovered undecided, as if waiting to see whether I would step back into the rain out of habit. I didn't. I stood in the doorway of my own life, inventorying what was mine and what I was finally done giving away. Somewhere behind me, the house I grew up in hummed on thermostat-locked photo, cracked bird hollow. Somewhere ahead, a different kind of table waited, one where I could set down proof and ask for nothing but quiet. I wasn't ready to knock on a courthouse door yet, but the path to it had never looked clearer. I slid the thumb drive into my bag and felt its small weight like a vow. The power struggle wasn't over. It was finally fair. The thumb drive in my bag became heavier with each day I carried it, as if the proof inside was gathering gravity. It wasn't just evidence, it was years of swallowed humiliation crystallized into files. When I finally walked into the lawyer's office, the air smelled faintly of ink and cold coffee, and the weight shifted. She listened as I laid everything out: the drained joint account, the ransacked apartment, the neon sign slapped across my car. I showed her screenshots, receipts, photos of empty shelves. She tapped her pen against the desk, sharp and deliberate. "This is theft," she said, her voice cool but certain. "If you want, we can press charges. At the very least, a threat of legal action will make him fold." Fold. The word stuck in my chest like a foreign language. My father, the man who had bent me into invisibility folding because of me. That night, I called Thomas. My phone trembled in my hand, but my voice came out steady. I hit record before he answered. "You've stolen from me," I said flatly. "The account, my apartment, my things. I've provided for this family my whole life." He snapped, his tone dipped in indignation. "Don't turn this into a crime." "It is a crime," I said. "And I spoke to a lawyer today. Return what you took or I'll press charges." He laughed, but it was strained like a rope fraying under too much tension. "You'd jail your own father, try me," I said, steel in my throat. "I have your admission on tape." Silence stretched across the line, thick enough to choke on. Then, for the first time in my life, I heard Thomas hesitate. His breath hitched, and when he spoke again, his voice cracked. "Fine, I'll get the money." 3 days later, my account lit up, every cent wired back. No excuses, no apologies. Just numbers glowing like proof that I wasn't powerless anymore. I stared at the screen for a long time, then closed my laptop. The victory was real, but it didn't taste like triumph. It tasted like endings. I sold my apartment, packed what little I had left, and took a job out of state. The move wasn't grand, just boxes stacked neatly in the back of the sedan that had outlasted every betrayal. The drive away felt like a pilgrimage, each mile carrying me further from the script I'd been forced to perform. The new place was small, quiet mine. No one slammed fists against tables there. No one siphoned my bank account. No one demanded I shrink so someone else could shine. For the first time in years, I slept without one ear tuned to chaos. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like clean air filling my lungs, and yet, even from a distance, the echoes reached me. Months later, Diane's number flashed on my screen. I let it ring once, twice before answering. "Hannah," she said, her voice frayed. "It's Chloe. She's pregnant. The father left. She has nothing. We need you." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling of my new apartment, a bitter laugh bubbling up. "She's better than me, right? Then she'll figure it out." And I hung up. Weeks later, an email slid into my inbox. "I'm sorry," Hannah, Chloe had written. "Single motherhood is harder than I thought. Dad's broke. Please, help us." I hovered over the message, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Then I clicked spam and closed the laptop. For years, I had been Hannah the provider, Hannah the invisible daughter, Hannah the afterthought. Now I was Hannah the free, Hannah the whole. The echo of my father's words still lived somewhere in me. "She's better than you," but they no longer cut. They rang hollow and empty chant from a play that had closed. And as I breathed in the quiet of my own life, I realized I didn't need his apology or Chloe's or even Diane's fragile pleas. What I needed, I had already taken back myself. Freedom doesn't arrive with trumpets. It slips in quietly in the spaces where fear used to live. In my new apartment, the nights were no longer punctured by buzzing phones or Diane's pleading knocks. The walls hummed with silence, and for once, that silence was mine. I filled it with small rituals, watering a plant that didn't belong to anyone else, cooking meals that no one criticized, leaving dishes in the sink if I felt like it because there wasn't a Thomas around to slam a fist on the table and demand better. Still, some echoes carried. I'd pass by the sedan in the parking lot, and every time I saw the dent in its fender, I thought about the neon for sale sign Thomas had slapped across it. That dent became something different in my eyes, not a flaw, but a scar I chose to keep proof of survival. I ran my hand along the chipped paint and whispered, "We made it out." Letters arrived, sometimes forwarded from my old address. Birthday cards with stiff handwriting, unsigned notes I didn't need to open to know they were from Diane. They smelled faintly of lavender and guilt. I stacked them in a drawer unopened. I wasn't cruel. I was done. There's a difference. But the world has a way of circling back. Months later, my phone lit up with a number I had nearly forgotten. Diane's voice wavered when I answered. "Hannah," she said, "Chloe is in trouble again. She's struggling as a single mother. She has nothing." We need you. Need. That word again, sharp as glass. I remembered every night my account drained without thanks, every favor that turned into expectation, every time my worth was measured against Chloe's reflection. I felt a laugh rise, not cruel, just final. She's better than me, remember? Then she'll figure it out. The silence on the line was heavy. Then Diane whispered, "Please." But I had no more currency to give neither money nor time nor pieces of myself. "Goodbye, Mom," I said gently and ended the call. Weeks later, Chloe reached out herself. An email raw and desperate. "I'm sorry, Hannah. I didn't realize how hard this would be. Dad can't help me. I don't know what to do. Please, I need you." I stared at the words until they blurred. My hand hovered over the keyboard, the old reflex tugging. But then I clicked spam. A single motion, simple and clean. I closed the laptop and with it the chapter of being everyone else's net. Because the truth was clear. Now I wasn't Hannah the wallet. I wasn't Hannah the scapegoat. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was Hannah whole. Hannah free. And maybe people will say I was cold or selfish or cruel. But tell me what's crueler. Letting them keep draining me until nothing was left or finally saying no. So now I ask you, the ones listening, the ones who know what it feels like to be erased, was I wrong to cut them off to fight back? Or was it the only way to take my life back? If you've ever carried a story like mine, drop it in the comments. Let it out. Stories like these deserve to be heard. And if this one made you feel something, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe because the next story will leave you speechless.